Alright, hey, welcome back to Clean Fair Magic. We're here today with another champion deck tech video from our latest winter, what is it? The
White Elephant.
White Elephant,
Yeah.
Our little just White Elephant gift exchange, deck exchange. So we're just here to do a deck tech on Ruxa.
Yeah, the winning deck.
Oh, yeah. Oh man, that was a game.
Yeah, that was definitely a game for sure. Okay, so should we just dive into the commander? We can read her.
Yeah.
Okay. Or him. I don't even know.
No clue. Not sure
No
what
idea.
matters.
So pretty much like whenever Ruxa Patient Professor enters the battlefield or attacks, return target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. Creatures you control with no abilities get +1/+1. You may have creatures you control with no abilities assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. The route that I went for with this deck is really just like big creatures, and they're all just like, I mean, pretty much all the text that most of them have are like the flavor lore text.
Yeah, I mean, like we've got like Quake Strider Ceratops, just like a massive 12/8, like Rumbling Ballast, Terrain Elemental, just all these guys with no text on them that we can get out and just use them and swing in for big damage. So yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, with this deck, it's pretty quick in the regard of like dealing lots of combat damage fast.
Yeah.
Because they can assign damage as if they weren't blocked, and that's why I kind of went for this Patient Professor deck, was because I was like, it'd be fun to just deal combat damage, and even though your big creatures are being blocked,
Yeah. Doesn't
opponents can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and one of the cards that's really good in here as well is Rampaging Ballasts. I mean, you just get free 4/4s that are basically just dealing 4 damage to your opponents each turn. So just massive creatures coming in, just swinging massive damage around is like the entire game plan.
Some other cards that we wanted to kind of take a look at, I think next were the enchantments.
Mm-hmm.
So first one, right, we saw this pretty much all game. It was the Rites of Flourishing card. Reason why I included it was just because it's extra card draw, so you can try to pull more things out of your deck, but also helps you ramp. And so like these creatures cost a lot, right? They're big creatures. They're big creatures with flavor text, lore.
Yeah.
And so, you know, getting ramp out really fast, I think it helps get those big creatures out.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing with Rites of Flourishing is that actually, I mean, while it was getting people a lot of card draw, it actually helped Benton out the most because he was able to just play so many lands from his exile. So Benton was actually ramping the hardest with Rites of Flourishing from that, and everybody else, I mean, Rebecca for what, like 3 or 4 turns?
I didn't get any lands.
You didn't get like any lands, even with Rites of Flourishing drawing you additional cards, so it was kind of crazy.
I think you were definitely second in line with like
I got a lot
getting
of lands out
the
there.
more value of like getting a bunch of ramp out.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's the problem with Rites of Flourishing sometimes though, is that you end up ramping other people, but if you end up ramping harder, then it can be worthwhile, and it speeds up your games too. Drawing cards, playing lands kind of helps to quicken it. However, it did not speed up this game.
We can thank Scramble
Yeah.
for that. So I think that's why we have it in the deck. The next one I wanted to get into was hopefully I'm saying this correctly, Muragonda? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Muragonda Petroglyph, something like that.
Muragonda Petroglyphs. Anthem effects, right? This is a great anthem effect because it's like creatures with no abilities get +2/+2. And so it's just to kind of make sure that like our creatures are hitting just a little bit harder.
Yep.
And that's why that was included.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best enchantments in the entire deck is this Unnatural Growth.
Yes.
Doubling power and toughness of creatures you control until end of turn is crazy. If you've got your 12/12 out, or 12/8 I guess, doubling that up, that's 24 damage that is just immediately dealt to your opponent. Like they can't
they can't do anything about it. As long as Ruxa is on the board,
yep,
you can just swing and
yep,
deal some crazy damage. So that's why I was like, yeah. And Unnatural Growth is one of those cards that you would really want to get. Next we are like the Sorceries and Instants. This is a very much Rebecca deck, right? We kind of have a joke about it in the playgroup that I probably don't run quite enough, but So we have, should we do the instants first?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So one of the cards that, I mean, it ended up winning me the game actually, and was in play quite a bit, was Fog. And prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Where you're swinging out with your massive creatures, you also have to be able to protect yourself from other incoming threats. And I mean, combat damage is the way that like 90% of people's decks end up winning. So if you're able to protect yourself even for one turn, that could end up winning you the game. So.
Okay, the next one is a Hunter's Insight. So it's an instant, right? You choose a target creature you control, and then whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. Well, with Ruxa's ability, you can choose how many cards pretty much you want to draw that turn because you're dealing combat damage. And assigning combat damage is that they weren't blocked. So it's a great way to just like, if you need to refill your hand, you can get a bunch of cards all at once because, right, most of the creatures in the deck are pretty big power-wise, but also with the added benefit of Ruxa just buffing a little bit more, it's an extra card to draw.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the cards actually that was also very impactful in this game was this Azuri's Predation. I mean, ultimately it didn't end up doing a ton because everything got scrambled around, but with this Azuri's Predation, I was able to create like 10 creatures and destroy, basically it was a one-sided board wipe and just had a ton of creatures on board. It's nice that all those creatures are also...
creatures with no abilities.
Yeah, creatures with no abilities. So because of that, I was able to have a ton of power on board, and it was actually really nice. It made a whole massive board for me, and in another game with Ruxa, that would end up winning me the game. So yeah.
Okay, and then the last sorcery that we wanted to really highlight is hopefully I'm also pronouncing this correctly, Clothis's Design.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect pronunciation. Let us know in the comments how perfect that pronunciation was.
So this one's like creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to green. I mean, you're pretty much having a mono green deck. There's going to be lots, if you can get a lot of creatures out on the board, or even like some of these enchantments, it kind of builds up the devotion. Yeah. And even if you just had like the commander and one creature out on the board, like your creatures will get +3/+3. Yeah. And you know, that can actually really add up really quickly, especially the more creatures that you do have on the board, the more devotion you have. It can really make even just the smallest of creatures a lot more formidable. And that's why I think it's such a powerful sorcery. I mean, it's 6 mana cost, but really, really great reward that comes with it.
Yep, and you don't need to be running any of like the Overwhelming Stampede or any of like these bigger overrun effects necessarily, because you don't need to go past their creatures in order to do combat damage. Yeah. So it's actually really a nice budget card to have in there to kind of stomp out your opponents. Okay, we also want to take a second to just talk about the artifacts in this deck. It was kind of interesting because where we're on a $20 budget, there are a couple of like non-bows that we sacrifice in order to have like additional card draw or different things. So like Rona's Monument, for example, it can give creatures, your green creature spells cost 1 less to cast, but also when you cast it, target creature gains +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So if you don't choose your commander, then the +2/+2 and trample will make a creature so that it will not deal its combat damage as though it was unblocked. So there are a couple of those in here.
But you know, with the +2/+2, right? Most of the time we probably would be wanting to put that on Ruxa. Just because, I mean, it's a 6/6 trample commander, but...
And from the recursion, if we're able to buff up our commander as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it ends up all working out. It's not really that big of a deal. But then one of these other artifacts that's really great is Lifecrafter's Bestiary. This is just additional card draw, trying to get through our deck, card advantage. It's actually really awesome in this deck.
And it gives you the ability to scry too, so... There's quite a few lands in this deck. Yeah. Moving to our lands, we have 39 lands in here, which is quite a few. That's more than I'm comfortable with. But, I run more lands.
Yeah, but Rebecca runs a lot of lands in her decks, which is fine. That's sometimes what you need.
It's personal preferences.
Yeah, it's personal preferences. Sometimes, Yeah, sometimes I'll run quite a few, but I don't think I've run 39 in any of my decks. That's quite a few for me. So I'm probably cutting it down quite a bit, and I'll be throwing in a bunch of other cards.
And the thing is too, is we were trying to keep this like within the budget.
Yeah.
So the basic lands are just a quick and really easy, just like, I mean, I don't think we like accounted for the cost.
Yeah, basic lands
are just
weren't
like,
counted into cost.
yeah, we didn't include those. So I was like, okay, I was pretty much on my budget line, so
Yeah.
like, okay, I have to either take out some better cards like Unnatural Growth, which is a little bit more expensive than the other ones, or just be like, okay, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of maybe artifacts, but I will be able to at least, you know, stay within that budget and have kind of better cards that might have a little bit better synergy than extra mana rocks and stuff like that. But
I'm planning on taking this kind of a more tokens deck. This Professor, he's a little bit more strict, right? This card allows us for a little bit less mobility as maybe some other decks. But how would you guys build this deck? Let me know in the comments. Let us know in the comments what you do.
Yep, that's it. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you know want to see more budget deck techs like this one, MTG gameplay and lore, subscribe to the fairest community of them all.
You know what? Like, comment, and subscribe. Hey gamers,
Bye.
Toodles, Friendos, love
Bye,
you.
Friendos.
Bye, Friendos.
Bye, fairest community.
Bye, Friendos, community of them all.
Bye, Friendos community.